Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to the Opposition's weekly press briefing for today, Sunday, March 13th. We are joining you today as we came from a march where hundreds of women joined the UNC Women's Arm yesterday to protest high food prices. Today, myself, Khadijah Ameen, MP for St. Augustine, and MP Vandana Mohit, MP for Shogunas East, who is also the Deputy Chairman of the UNC Women's Arm, will share our thoughts on the war on women, the war on farmers, and the high food prices that Trinidad and Tobago is facing at this time. I hand you over to MP for Shogunas East, Ms. Vandana Mohit.
Thank you very much, colleague, MP Khadijah Ameen. Good morning to you, our fellow citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Particularly good morning to our women of Trinidad and Tobago, and good morning to members of the media. Earlier this week, we would have celebrated International Women's Day globally. And speaking about International Women's Day, this morning I want to begin by referring to our very own country, Trinidad and Tobago. And when I refer to our country, Trinidad and Tobago, I specifically want to state that our women would have come from very far, and at this stage we cannot be taken for granted. Because what happens when our women are taken for granted? Our children, who we call the future of tomorrow, may not even have a future when we take our women for granted. And we must admit that over the years, the struggle of women worldwide, it has brought some of our women into the workforce and even pushed some of our women to becoming breadwinners within the household. And what is one of the most critical elements within any household? And when we speak household, for a mother especially, one of the most critical elements is that of the ability to provide food within the household and sustain the home. And yes, we would all agree that the pandemic would have caused countries globally to face challenges. But all in all, it is the duty of every government to explore initiatives to protect the well-being of its nation and its citizens. And today, I want to take the opportunity and use this forum to look a little bit into what exactly is taking place in our country. And I want to specifically look at food security, which is really becoming a serious issue. And when we look at the government's reaction as it pertains to food security, all we can simply say is that this government needs to stop mamaguying the population. And when I say mamaguying the population, preaching safety net. Stop mamaguying the population about safety net. Because women in this country, if we are to speak in local parlance, are bawling when they receive and look at their grocery bills after their purchase of food. And I want to use an example. Very recent, I was speaking to a mother of three, and this mother said to me that she had to engage in a meeting with her children and inform them of certain things, and inform them that certain things within the household will have to change. And I want to give you a simple example. This mother said to me that she had to say to her children in that meeting, a family meeting, that if we are to eat egg, we'll have egg, not egg and sausage like we did before. So we now have to choose within the household of what we eat, just to sustain the household. And citizens have been crying out, I would say over the last few months, most importantly, in particular complaining about grocery bills increasing by hundreds of dollars. And we are seeing now where persons are being faced with situations where they have to live day to day or month to month. And when I speak about a few months now, citizens are facing issues within the household as it relates to food prices. Look at this article, October 7, 2021. Consumers are saying food costs more than $17.50 minimum wage. So it's not today. It's for some months now. Persons are actually crying out as it pertains to food bills. And we are living and seeing situations where mothers are facing situations where their groceries cannot last the entire month. Midway into the month or closer to the end of the month, mothers have to go to offices or go to NGOs or go to places where they know of would be distributing hampers to get hampers to sustain them until they could get another salary. And these are working mothers I'm speaking of. What about those who are not working? They are faced with situations to run to offices, NGOs, places that are giving out hampers almost every other day because they have to focus on feeding their children and sustaining their homes. And we have to ask ourselves, and today we ask, is the government really listening to our citizens? Are they even wondering how CPEP and URP workers are sustaining themselves throughout the month when grocery prices, food bills are increasing daily, and these people have other bills such as utilities and additional bills to look after, because persons who never had internet as of last year and the year before, they would have had to seek the services of internet providers for online schooling. So when you look at these workers, and you have to really ask how they are sustaining themselves. And on top of that, they are reviewing the social support grants at this time. And when I speak about reviewing social support grants, we speak about the food cards. So persons are actually losing food cards, etc. And you would have heard the Minister recently of Social Development, who is a part of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, would have made mention of dead persons receiving grants, persons outside of the country receiving grants, residing abroad, persons with jobs, etc., receiving grants and food cards in particular. But what I can tell you, the citizens, this morning, is that persons coming to my office, and I'm sure my colleagues' office and my other colleagues' offices as well, when they speak to us and say to us that I went to buy groceries and there are no monies on my food card, they are not any police officer, they are not any person living abroad. These persons are genuinely social situations that are very distressful. That requires them to really seek social assistance and be a part of the social safety net. So I am not sure, or I wish to state at this time that persons who are in genuine social situations seeking the food card and being removed are those who would have been involved or receiving food cards which may have been costing the state, and they are not requiring the assistance. So all in all, the little food card that used to help these people are being taken away. And I want to share something with you, the citizens, this morning. Following the Minister's announcement of the review of the food support program in January 2022, which was very recent, the government brought a variation of appropriation for fiscal 2021, and attached was a statement of transfers for 2022. And under the head 18, which is under the Ministry of Finance, it was stated that up to fiscal 2020, there was a savings on the food card program. And I want to specifically read from a document provided, which I mentioned before, the statement of transfers for 2020. And this is the reasoning and justification for this savings in which I'm telling you about. And the justification and reason for savings state as follows. continuous review of the food support program has resulted in a reduction in the number of persons meeting the qualifying criteria for food cards. This has resulted in a savings under the food card program of $105 million, 200,000. So, such a huge savings based on reviews stated by the government. We didn't say that, we didn't find that, they presented this to us. Savings under the food card program up to 2020. And yet you are coming to tell us you need to review and review because there are persons who may be gaining monies for food support, for other forms of grants, costing the state. And they don't require the social assistance. So, really and truly, from what I've just told you about the savings under the food card program, you can see that this government is basically subtracting persons from the social safety net, removing persons from the social safety net, and basically leaving them to wander. And what is happening when they conduct all these reviews? They are also limiting persons to the access of social programs in a time where it's most needed, in a time where persons are facing high food bills, persons are struggling to pay utilities, persons are struggling to return their children to school, persons are facing uncertainty each day when the government is making a decision today and scrapping the decision tomorrow. So families, women in particular, are facing additional stress. And today, we want to take this opportunity to call on the government as it relates to the social support grants, particularly the food card program, to inform citizens of the qualifying income for the food card program. Because based on what is revealed when you inform citizens of the qualifying income for the food card program, citizens will see how you, the government, is just balancing the books. And we ask balancing the books to do what? Maybe to pay rent. And the government isn't even bothered about how you, the citizens, you, the women, will survive when your food card is heartlessly taken away from you. And on top of that, you have the Prime Minister now coming to tell citizens about bracing for a gas price hike and leaving citizens in a panic after the Prime Minister basically told our citizens to brace for a gas price hike. We are saying today that is nothing but the waging of a war on the belly of our citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Why we are saying that? Because persons are already facing increased food bills. And here comes the Prime Minister telling you to brace for more licks, brace for a gas price hike. And for God's sake, we are saying this morning, persons are still trying to recover from the government's lockdown measures. We are sitting here, but does the government know, are they aware that persons are still trying to clear utility bills? Persons still have backup of utilities and they have added bills such as internet, etc., which I would have mentioned before. And I want citizens, do not forget last year do you remember when WASA launched the debt collection drive? On top of when you, the citizens, were facing difficulties, and they would have had to stop and hold on that debt collection drive. And we are asking the government again this morning, are you aware that people are living month to month and families have been engaging in borrowing, etc.? Some persons would have been left to purchase devices. Some families cannot purchase a device out of pocket because of the struggles in which they are facing. So they therefore have to take loans, etc. They therefore have to borrow from family members. They are faced with different situations to acquire the needs of their families. And now you are telling the citizens to brace for a gas hike. And you know what is much more alarming is the Prime Minister had the audacity to say that no one thinks about the cost of fuel when going anywhere in TNT. And I repeat, no one thinks about the cost of fuel when going anywhere in TNT. So, first it was blame Kamala, then blame COVID, blame Ukraine, blame everybody, and now blaming you, the citizens, for having to tell you to brace for a gas hike. And is the Prime Minister even thinking about what is going to happen to our citizens? And then your party wants to preach for us on national media and to our citizens that you are so concerned about women's rights and you are doing everything to protect women's rights. Do you know what a gas hike bill means? Sorry, a gas price hike? Do you know, Mr. Prime Minister, what a gas price hike means? It means a hike in everything. It means a food bill hike. Everything is going to hike. Transportation. So, this really is more stress and strain, particularly on our women of this country. And more so women who are faced with situations in being the breadwinners in the home. And additionally, what you would find is within the households, there are challenges resulting from the pandemic in homes with both men and women. And the government is basically creating room for women and children to become more exposed to violent situations. And this is where we link poverty to crime. So really and truly, this government have failed to create avenues for women, one, who were forced basically to leave their jobs to facilitate things such as online schooling, etc. And they have not yet made any headway to job opportunities for women post-pandemic. But they are telling you, the citizens, to brace for a gas hike. This, we again say, is a complete wage of war on our citizens. And I want to touch on one last point before I hand over to my colleague. I want to refer additionally to a live discussion which was held on Twitter by the British High Commission and a delegation of the European Union to Trinidad and Tobago, where it was reported, and I have the article here, the general consensus is that women in Trinidad and Tobago don't feel safe. Reported in the Trinidad and Tobago Express. And based on the Attorney General's response in improving legislation to help women feel safe, etc., and what more needs to be done, we want to say to the Attorney General this morning that you need to face the facts and understand that nobody is interested in you hiding behind the whistleblower legislation, as you've stated at this particular event. Stop hiding behind the whistleblower legislation to cover your inefficiencies. And this brings me to our plight, which is we will continue to ask, where is the pepper spray for our women? Where is the pepper spray for our women? You keep saying it's coming, but it's not reaching. And we will continue to ask that, because generally our women have a concern with their safety and we stand in support of them. And you would have seen that yesterday, citizens, when our women were engaged in a march against high food prices, crimes against women, and the erosion of democracy. And you would see women from various regions attended and participated in that march as it relates to crime and poverty, crimes against women, poverty facing women, high food prices, etc. And we have said it before, what is being created is a horrific situation, and we are questioning and always looking at the government's reaction towards our citizens. And we have said it before, and I'll say it again this morning before closing. This government's wage of war on the people, by its actions, is definitely creating a situation whereby citizens of this country are becoming income poor and facing asset risks. And if this continues, the future of generations to come will be in serious danger. So I would have touched on some points, and at this time I hand over to my colleague to continue.
Thank you very much, MP Vandana Mohit, my sister in the struggle and the fight for the women and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And as food prices increase in Trinidad and Tobago, the Rowley administration continues the blame game. So they are now experts and specialists, it seems, in the blame game. They blame COVID. Well, first of all, they blame Kamala. They blame Kamala, blame the UNC, blame COVID. You are now blaming the war on Ukraine. This government needs to stop the blame game and take responsibility for your failures. Do your job. In addition to the increased food prices, the government is actually at this time considering increased water rate, increased electricity rate, and bringing property tax at a time when the earnings of most households in Trinidad and Tobago has dropped. I see my partner here, boy, our Honorable Prime Minister, in today's newspaper saying bullets coming for us. Mr. Prime Minister, are you looking for sympathy? You have waged war on the people of this country. You have waged war on the mothers of this country. You have waged war on farmers. Long before the war on Ukraine, Rowley has had a continuous war on farmers, the people who could produce the food to feed our nation. So don't come now and blame the increase in prices on the war in Ukraine. And it was your own callous decision that caused us to be in this economic turmoil we are in, long before COVID, long before the war in Ukraine. You know, we cannot control the war in Ukraine, but what we can control is our agricultural access roads being improved, water supply, drainage system, irrigation. I remember there was a farmer 2 years ago from the Freeport area, and in the midst of a harsh dry season, he lost thousands of dollars worth of duck because of lack of water. And the CEO of Master Ducks, that farm in Arena there, he came and he said that every year from January to June, since his farm opened, he faced that difficulty. And in 2019, he said overnight, over 1,000 ducks fell and died because of dehydration, and approximately 10,000 ducks, which were ready for the market, were affected by the lack of water. But meanwhile, the goat farm in Tobago going real good. So what farmers face is little access to water. Farmers are not able to rear their animals and plants during the dry season. And during the rainy season, farmers, animals, and their crops become submerged by water. Their farms are flooded out, and you have hundreds of thousands and collectively millions in losses when the government has failed to provide support for the farmers. The government has failed to provide pumps and floodgates, and thousands of communities, including agriculture communities, are affected. Dozens of farmers are devastated every month because you have failed to deliver on your promises. The things you promised in your manifesto were just talk, mama guy. What is being done to assist farmers and to improve food production in Trinidad and Tobago? How much of the money that you release to support farmers is going to your friends and family and financiers, while the little man continues to suffer and the food price for citizens increase? How many farmers have you provided with machinery support, with land development, with crop development, and to even hire farm aides that you promised. All Rowley seems to be doing is to be studying his goat farm in Tobago and minding his friends and family and financiers' business. This government has had so many failed promises when it comes to agriculture. The Minister of Finance boasted to this population that the government would give a $500 million stimulus package for agriculture. You remember that? And that it would be made available to farmers. Year after year, the government has promised this grant. In 2018, in 2019, in 2020, you have been making the same promise to farmers for this $100,000 grant. Maybe because the farmers are not the 1%, you have not focused on them, but the farmers are the backbone of this nation, and reducing food prices in this country, improving food security and the ability of every family to feed themselves rests with our farmers and with agriculture and food production. The government led by Kamla Persad-Bissessar not only respected farmers but supported them to enhance food security for this nation. There were hundreds of agricultural access roads that were developed and repaired, irrigation systems to ensure that water for the crops and so on would get to the respective areas, ponds, the provision of ponds for water collection, again for irrigation purposes, the leases, securing leases and distributing leases so farmers will have security of tenure. Security of tenure means you could go on your own to the bank and stand on your own 2 feet. Ensuring that we have markets for produce so that you will not have spoilage. The ADB under the Kamla Persad-Bissessar led government ensured that there were proper loan packages that were assured for farmers so that farmers had financial and legislative support to make our nation food secure. And we will not be having this devastating economic and social turmoil we are facing today. Those things do not reap immediate rewards, and they have to be maintained. And what did this government do when they came in? They scrapped everything. And what they have now is a series of failed promises and failed agricultural initiatives, including promises for youth in agriculture. You are putting our women in this country under stress. You, Keith Rowley, and your administration, with your chaotic decision making, you are operating by VAPs, and you are causing undue stress to the women and the mothers of this country. You know, I will give you an example. Dr. Keith Rowley announced on a Friday in Parliament that all public servants will have to return to work. Almost immediately, the Minister of Public Health, Terence Dialsing, announced that daycares will remain closed. What utter nonsense! And then on the Sunday, Minister Dialsing came to make the announcement that daycare centers will now be open. Time and time again, you have this chaotic decision making that reflects the incompetence of the government that causes undue stress. The timeline of their decision represents a total lack of forethought, and really this demonstrates incompetent leadership. The same is being done in the education system. The government opened schools and then decided to close them back. They decided on virtual classes, then physical classes, then mixed classes, then back to virtual classes, and then full classes. And their entire decision-making process shows a total lack of planning, a lack of use of data, reflecting what accurately happens in the schools and on the ground, a lack of consulting with the stakeholders such as the teachers and parents and administrators. And this trial and error approach to their decision making is having an impact on our mothers and our children financially, as well as on their mental health and well-being. You had the decision to provide food cards for parents whose children were on the school feeding program. That turned out to just be an election promise, because you did it in 2020, the year of the election, and then you stopped it. You promised food baskets for these people, market bags, and there was never any program to specifically target the children who were on the school feeding program. But when school opens or school is not open, there are costs to manage for families and for households. When children have to go back to school compared to when they are home, you have to consider uniform, shoes, book bags that you would not have to consider if they're at home. You have to provide lunches. The items you need to prepare lunch for a child is different to what you would normally prepare at home in many cases. School transport, whether you are dropping your child yourself or if the child is using public transport or if you are paying school transport. These things have an impact, and parents are studying where they're getting the money, because even the basic things they cannot afford, and your decision making is leaving the people in a state of confusion and just causing unnecessary stress. You know, and there has been so many promises to protect women, so many promises to deal with the violence against women. All of these things are contributing to the stress. It's very stressful to be a woman in Trinidad and Tobago under this government. And my sister Vandana Mohit mentioned the promise of pepper spray legislation by the Attorney General. You know, I hear the Attorney General speaking a lot about legislation being achievements. Faris Alwari, do yourself a favor and just sit down. Drink some water. You can have more and more legislation, but it is not going to solve the social issues that this government is failing to deal with if you do not have action. The pepper spray legislation is one classic example where you boast of legislation and then there is no action, and it is still not a reality for women in Trinidad and Tobago. So the government seems to be very disconnected from the reality in their decisions, in their decision making. They do not realize that mothers have lost jobs, that they literally do not have food to feed their children. Their income has decreased while food prices, fuel has skyrocketed, rent has increased. The government themselves has made a conscious decision to increase utility bills, to introduce property tax, and to return VAT on basic food items that was removed under Kamala Prasad Bisesa. You, Mr. Prime Minister, have declared war on the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and we must stand and defend ourselves. I want to share something with you this morning. You're talking about bullets coming for us. These are his words, bullets coming for us, and I want to tell you how the slow death that is coming to citizens. You see these groceries on this table? This morning I went to the supermarket to purchase some items for a family to drop off after this press conference. The items here cost $256. And I just want to tell you that these are very, very bare, basic items. A small pack of sugar, $8.75. A small pack of rice, a 2 kg rice, that could probably feed a family about twice, $23.75. A pack of Kerrygold milk. This milk is a 350 gram milk, so it is pretty small. This is $20. And there are other brands that are even more expensive. A pack of flour. This is a pack of flour that a family might make some roti or bread at home. You home eating brioche and croissants while families can't even buy flour to make a little roti and a little bread and bake at home. Flour is a basic item that has also been increased. We have basic things like peas. We just purchased 2 small packets of split peas and lentil peas. And these again might feed a family once or twice depending on how much they eat. And families are limiting themselves and limiting the nutrition that they get. We also had some potatoes. 3 potatoes, $13. 3 potatoes. How much can this go to feed a family? We have some simple things like onion and garlic that everybody uses. Women's products, sanitary products is also a basic necessity, yes, and that as well is something that many women are not able to afford at this time because of the increase in prices. Basic soap powder, this is $34. Tuna, we were able to get a little special where we had 3 tins of tuna. Cornflakes, this is a small box of cornflakes, and this is $10. So, and then we have corned beef and oil corned beef. This corned beef is $25. This is Mr. Corned Beef now, whereas before corned beef was seen as a cheap form of food. And then you have oil. This bottle of oil is $14, and this is a small bottle of oil. It will not last a family very long. And I want you to have a look at the items on this table, and you will see that we have a little Blue Band butter, not no fancy real butter. This is margarine, and many of you in government, you probably don't even use margarine. You're probably using butter, so you don't understand what families face. These items, the total cost is $255.96. That is what we are facing when we are in the grocery. This is what Trinidad and the reality that Trinidad and Tobago face. This is a real grocery bill, and many families cannot even afford these items. These items are going to a small family in the constituency of St. Augustine. These are items I personally purchased, and I, as a mother, I am also make groceries for myself, and I have seen the increase in prices. So the reality that you live in is very far from the reality that Trinidad and Tobago lives in. And I want to share with you, this morning when I went to the grocery, there was a family outside begging. And this is becoming a common sight outside groceries now, where people are coming with donation sheets. They sometimes stand with their children and they are begging for charity. They are begging for you to buy something for them to eat. And you may think that these people are doing it because they see it as a way to get rich quick. And sadly, this seems to be how the government looks at it. But the reality is that there are many who are begging just to make a living, just to put something on the table. There are families who will make rice and butter because they don't have peas or meat to go with it. So please stop looking down on our families when we say that people cannot afford. They really cannot afford. Your failure for the social support, your belief that the people who are getting food cards are somehow outsmarting the government, that disabled people who you are taking away food cards from, that you feel that a $2,000 disability grant is enough to pay utilities, pay rent, buy food, buy medication, you think that is okay? I challenge any government minister to try to survive on $2,000 for a month and come back and then let us review the social welfare programs. Put yourself on what a pension or a disability grant is. Put your grocery budget for the value of what a food card is, and you try to live on that, and then let us do a real review of the social welfare programs in this country. I challenge you to that. But I want to urge citizens to stay strong and let us continue to speak out against the war that this government has waged on the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We must not stay quiet. We must stand and we must fight back. Thank you.
Do you have a few questions?
So we open to questions? Okay.
MB Mohit, is there any data to show how many families are suffering from food insecurity, or how many families are dependent on these food cards?
Thanks for your question. And we have questioned in the Parliament on many occasions data as it relates to the effects of the pandemic on households. And on several occasions, we would have asked the government to have a look at the IDB report, which provides some data of the impact of the pandemic within households. And what what families would have faced as it relates to income within the households. And when you look at income within the households, you would automatically see how such income impacts on the food bill within households. So we have been questioning, we have been asking about data, and really and truly, we can't see it forthcoming, because data at this point in time will be very crucial as it relates to solving issues which arise out of the pandemic and persons who are facing social issues as a result of such.
Thank you, Ameen. In the roadmap to recovery that was produced by the government after COVID, last year, there were incentives to the agricultural industry. Have there been any follow-up to these by the government?
I think that roadmap to recovery committee was some sort of, it appears now that the roadmap to recovery committee was an exercise in PR and a political stunt. The recommendations of that committee has not been implemented in any meaningful way. One of the things that came in a budget after that was a $500 million stimulus package for the agriculture sector. There was also a promise of $100,000 grants for farmers, and we have not received any report as to how many farmers have been able to access those grants, who have been able to access land, machinery, technical support, or any kind of support based on that program. So I have to write it off as just one more of the many broken promises and the PR stunt. And I want to tell you, Keith Rowley, propaganda and public relations and conversations with the people does not fill bellies. It does not put food on the table. You have to get real and start to deal with what is facing this country, and as Prime Minister, take responsibility to ensure that citizens do not literally die of hunger.
Another question to either speaker. Is the opposition calling for the removal of VAT on more food items as they've done?
When Kamla Bissessa was Prime Minister, VAT was removed from several food items based on consultations with stakeholders. When Keith Rowley became Prime Minister in 2015, one of the first things that he did was to increase VAT. He increased VAT, but he put it across as though he was decreasing VAT from 15% to 12.5%. And while VAT on everything decreased from 15 to 12.5%, he also put back the VAT on several items that was zero rated under Kamla Bissessa, and that increase went from 0 to 12.5%. The government's intention was to increase its revenue from VAT, and it was reflected in the budget documents that came to Parliament. So they fooled the population by saying that they were going to reduce VAT. VAT would have been reduced on luxury items such as vehicles, such as boats and yachts. VAT would have been decreased from 15% to 12.5%. But not everybody buying boats and not everybody buying car and new brand vehicles every 2 years. These are the things that people are buying every day, and many of the items, grocery items, as well as other things that were zero rated, the government put VAT back on. So we continue to call for VAT to be removed from more basic items to allow more affordability, to allow people to be able to afford these items. And the review also has to do with books and electronics that come into the country, and some more things. There are more things that have become basic electronic items because of the digital world we are living in. The need for virtual school, virtual work, a lot of things that are now considered necessary that are electronic items and computer related. So I hope that the government could look at some real data to inform them of what is actually happening and make policies that would reflect the need. Yeah? All right. Well, we want to thank you for joining us this morning, and we in the opposition continue to bring you the facts and bring you the truth. Join us tomorrow at our Monday virtual platform live from our headquarters at M. Rampasad building. We start at 7 and we will be live on our Facebook and YouTube and our UNC page. Our featured speaker is Kamla Prasad Sessa, leader of the opposition. And I think this one you will have some fireworks. So you need to tune in to our live. Thank you very much for joining us, myself and my sister Vandana Mohit.